You said yes 3 weeks ago, and you meant it. But now it's an hour before, you're staring at your phone, and your whole body is quietly begging you to type those 4 words. I'm so sorry, but here's the thing about you. You're not cold. You're not flaky. You're the kind of person who genuinely loves the people in your life. And yet you cancel again and again, and every time you do, something strange happens. You feel that instant flood of relief. Then, a little later, the guilt arrives, and slowly, plan by plan, your world gets a little smaller. But here's what nobody tells you. The relief you feel isn't really about the plan at all. It's about something happening inside your brain hours before you ever cancel. And once you understand what that something is, you'll never see your cancellations the same way again. Because here's the truth most people never stop to consider. For most people, canceling is a logistics problem. Something came up. The car broke down. Work ran late. But for you, it's almost never that simple. For you, it's an emotional one. Something rose up inside you that you couldn't quite name, and suddenly staying home felt less like a choice and more like a need. You're not flaky. Your system is just doing a kind of math that everyone else doesn't have to do. By the end of this video, you'll understand the real psychology behind last-minute canceling, the hidden reason that relief feels so addictive, and the one thing you're canceling has been quietly trying to protect all along. And most people miss the fourth sign completely, even though it's the one that costs them the most. But to understand why you do it now, we have to go back to where this pattern actually started. Think back for a moment. Somewhere along the way, you learned that saying no out loud wasn't safe. Maybe you grew up in a home where your time wasn't really yours, where every weekend was already filled, where disappointing someone felt dangerous. So you became an expert at the easier path. You said yes in the moment to keep the peace. And then later, quietly, you found a way to slip out. What you were actually building was something psychologists call anticipatory anxiety. Your brain has a threat prediction system run largely by a small structure called the amygdala, and its whole job is to forecast cost before anything has even happened. For you, it started forecasting the social cost of an event days in advance. On top of that, your nervous system treats obligation itself as a low-grade stressor, slowly draining what we might call your social battery long before the door ever opens. So here's the truth of it. You didn't learn to lie about wanting to go. You learned to say yes when you had the energy to imagine it, and no when the moment finally got real. And this is where it gets strange. Most people commit and then forget. You commit and then you carry it, a quiet weight that grows heavier as the date approaches. Because the very thing that makes you cancel is the same thing that made you say yes so eagerly in the first place. That contradiction shows up as the first, it starts with a kind of split inside you that you've probably never had words for. 3 weeks ago, future you happily said yes, and future you is wonderful. Future you is rested, social, energized, basically a completely different person. Future, you can already picture the laughter, the good conversation, the easy night out. But present you, the one who actually has to put on real clothes and walk out the door, never agreed to any of this. Present you is tired. Present you just wants the couch. There's a name for this. Psychologists call it the empathy gap, sometimes the hot-cold empathy gap, and it's tied to something called affective forecasting. In plain terms, the human brain is genuinely terrible at predicting how a future emotional state will feel. When you're calm and rested, you simply cannot imagine how drained you'll be in the moment. So let me say this clearly, because you've probably been beating yourself up over it for years. You're not breaking a promise. You're two different people, and the one who made the plan isn't the one who has to keep it. For most people, the gap between their planning self and their doing self is small. A little dip in motivation. For you, it's not a gap at all. It's a canyon. But there's a reason that canyon is so much wider for you, specifically, and it has nothing to do with willpower. That reason becomes obvious the closer the plan gets, which brings us to the second sign, stackable sign. Watch what happens in the hours before. You start checking the clock more than usual. You begin rehearsing excuses in your head, testing each one to see which sounds the most believable. There's a heaviness sitting in your chest, a slow building pressure. And then you finally type the message, you hit send, and in an instant, that heaviness lifts. You can breathe again. That single moment is the engine behind everything. It's a negative reinforcement loop. Canceling removes a stressor, and the second the stressor disappears, your brain floods with relief. And relief, it turns out, is one of the most powerful reinforcers in all of human behavior, far stronger than reward. So every time this happens, the pattern gets wired a little deeper. Here's the simplest way to understand it. Every time you cancel and feel that wave of lightness, your brain quietly files it away. That worked. Do it again. And this is where you're different. For most people, when plans fall through, they feel mild disappointment. A small, oh well. But for you, it's not disappointment at all. It feels closer to a prison door swinging open. Most people miss this part entirely. So let me say it plainly. That relief is exactly what's trapping you. The very thing that feels like freedom is the thing tightening the cycle. And that trap points to something deeper than anxiety. It points to something about you that most people overlook completely. It points to how much you actually feel. Because here's what you're actually avoiding, and it isn't the dinner, it isn't the party, or the coffee, or the ketchup. What you're avoiding is the version of yourself you'll have to become once you get there. The one who's switched fully on, engaged, warm, present, mirroring everyone's energy, reading the room, keeping the conversation flowing, making sure no one feels left out. That version of you is exhausting to maintain, and somewhere inside, you already know it. There's real science underneath this. It's the cost of high empathy, what researchers call emotional labor. People with deeply sensitive nervous systems, sometimes described as highly sensitive people, experience something called emotional contagion. You don't just attend a gathering, you absorb it. You pick up everyone's moods, tensions, and unspoken feelings, and your brain quietly processes all of it in the background. So let me reframe this for you. You're not antisocial. You feel everything in the room all at once, and your brain already knows the bill that's coming afterward. For most people, a get-together is just a get-together. They enjoy it, they go home unchanged. For you, it's a full-body experience, one you have to genuinely recover from, sometimes for days. But here's what almost no one realizes. The deeper this runs, the more it starts costing you in a way you can't even see while it's happening. Which leads us straight to the fourth and most overlooked sign of all. This is the sign almost everyone misses, and it's the one that hurts the most. The cancellation is sent, the relief washes over you, but within the hour, that relief quietly fades and something else moves in to take its place. It starts as a slow drip, the over-apologizing, the imagined look of disappointment on their face, the story you start telling yourself that you're a bad friend, an unreliable person, someone people can't count on, and then the urge to over-explain, to send a second message, and maybe a third. There's a name for this. It's the shame-guilt spiral, driven by self-monitoring and rumination through a brain network called the default mode network. The same mind that predicted the social threat now replays the cancellation on an endless loop. So you don't actually get away clean. You trade 20 minutes of dread for a whole evening of guilt, and you do it anyway, which tells you just how big that dread really is. A casual canceller forgets by dinner. You're still drafting the apology at midnight, and that hidden tax is exactly where this pattern starts quietly costing you the things you love most. And here's where it quietly turns. Over time, the invitations slow down. Friends stop asking, not out of anger, but because they've learned not to expect a yes. Your world contracts, one missed plan at a time, and somewhere in there, you start to believe it about yourself. You become the flaky one. The loneliness creeps in, not because you don't want people, but because wanting them and showing up for them stopped matching. There's a cruel mechanism underneath this. Avoidance feeds anxiety. Every time you dodge a plan, you shrink the very tolerance that would have made the next one easier. Every cancellation makes the next plan feel a little scarier, and the circle gets a little smaller. So let me say the thing you feared. You're not losing people because you don't care. You're losing them because you care so much it overwhelms you. But if you felt seen by any of this, here's the part that changes everything. You are not broken. You were shaped. Last-minute canceling was never a character flaw. It's a survival adaptation built by a nervous system that learned somewhere along the way to protect its limited energy and to absorb far too much from the world around it. That's not weakness. That's a system trying to keep you safe. And once you see it that way, growth gets gentler. Start practicing honest, soft yeses instead of automatic ones. Build recovery time into your week so you're never forced to choose between people and peace. And tell one trusted friend the truth so canceling stops living in the dark as a secret shame. Because the goal was never to force yourself to show up more. The goal is to stop hating yourself for the times you can't. And once you stop seeing this as a flaw, you start to see what it really says about you. Because here's the truth you've been missing all along. The very same sensitivity that makes you cancel is the same sensitivity that makes you a rare kind of friend. When you do show up, you show up fully. Present, attuned, deeply feeling. The kind of person who notices what everyone else misses. The people who cancel the most are often the ones who care the most about getting it right. That's not a contradiction. That's depth. And the depth you carry was never a defect. It was always a gift, even on the days it felt like a burden. So if this felt like someone finally read your mind, share it with that one friend who always cancels. Not to call them out, but to let them know they're not broken either. And subscribe so we can keep making sense of the parts of you that no one else has ever taken the time to explain.